everybody. Happy Tuesday. So we are here again. We're going to revisit the Curious Garden. I hope you guys had fun with the Curious Garden yesterday. Kind of celebrating Earth Day and just kind of thinking about maybe today, maybe this week or something, you can go outside, give your grass a little bit of water, give your trees in your yard a little bit of water. Maybe you're planting some flowers this week for Earth Day, just to kind of be real appreciative of those lovely green and all those colors that we see in our yards and on walks as around our neighborhood. So we're going to visit the Curious Garden again, and this time it's for a different reason, and we're going to think about those characters in the story. So Liam's our main character, but in the story there's a lot more characters that come and join him, but we don't get to meet them. But I want you to think about how they feel about building that city garden. How do you think they feel about that? So as I'm reading the story today, I want you to think about that, how they might feel through the story or building that city garden. Okay, because that's what you're going to prove it today in your seesaw activity. So it's going to be a picture. It's going to look like this. And you're going to fill that in and then draw a picture. Draw a picture of the city garden and what it looks like. And it could be, you could include Liam in there, or you can include some of those other characters that we don't get the privilege of meeting. But I want you to think about how they feel. All right, so here we go. The Curious Garden. It's very curious. Why do you think it's called the Curious Garden? Because he refers to it a couple times in the story. It gets very curious. It travels all over. All right, so we have the Curious Garden. There once was a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days, while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing throughout his neighborhood. It was one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway, and the first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last thing he had expected to find up there, but when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless, and it wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the Curious Garden explored every corner of the railway. There it goes, it keeps traveling. There's Liam. Keeps going. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit his plants. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken a toll on the garden, but thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. But the most surprising things that popped up were the new gardeners. There's those characters we don't get to meet, but they're there. And there they are, enjoying the stairs, a picnic, some pruning, making some animals. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed, but of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. And there it is, nice and colorful. So because of that curious garden, off it goes, all over the city. And thanks to extra gardeners as well. So you're going to head over to Seesaw. And there are a couple other things to do on Seesaw today, so make sure you check those out. I think one of them is a brain pop, so make sure you do that one. How did the people in the story feel about creating a city garden? And what makes you think that? Did they like it? How do you know? Okay, so how do you know that they liked it? How do you know that they didn't like it? Which one do you think it is? So make sure that you fill this in and you prove it, and then with a picture that shows that they either liked it or didn't like it and why. Make sure you defend your answer. Okay? All right. See you tomorrow.